Last week, I added a bunch of extra stuff to the iMPACT review, so I had to disregard some things and limit my comments on that show to the major points. Well, this week I have my full 10 minutes, and I'm going to start by talking about something that I didn't have a chance to touch on last week. This Jay Lethal-Sanjay Dutt feud took another disastrous turn down asinine gimmick match alley. Apparently, SoCal Val says that she's going to suspend her wedding ring above the wrestling ring, and whoever gets the ring gets Val. Oh my God. First of all, Sanjay ruins Val's wedding, then she's trying to choose between him and Jay Lethal, and now she's going to let the whole thing be decided by a wrestling match? What woman in her right mind would behave like this? Second, the gimmick means that TNA is about to have their 10th ladder match since Genesis, and they just had one a couple weeks ago. Are you kidding me? Jay Lethal got boring chants and Fire Russo chants in his hometown at Hard Justice because the live crowd didn't like the gimmick of the match. Doesn't that tell you anything? What's next? Are we gonna suspend Val above the ring? Have a SoCal Val on a pole match? This whole thing is just awful, and what pisses me off so much is that the feud had so much potential. The build-up to it was great, but everything after their Victory Road match has just been atrocious. Well, that and the actual heel turn itself is Slammiversary. But they completely ruined it with retarded gimmick matches, plot twists that make no sense, and even worse, character developments that make no sense. 1 week after Jay Lethal accidentally knocks his fiancée unconscious, and he's walking out to the ring doing his posing, his whole Macho Man routine, like he doesn't have a care in the world. What sense does that make? He should be upset. He should be distraught. Ugh, I wanted to say this for weeks. This could have been a serious, emotional, compelling storyline, and they turned it into a fucking cartoon. This is the worst feud in wrestling right now, and it's not even that it's this boring and one-dimensional like most of the WWE storylines. It's just bad. Offensively bad. Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt deserve so much better than this, and that's all that I've got to say about that. Okay, gonna talk about the September 4th TNA iMPACT. Yeah, you heard me right, TNI, Total Nonstop Interviews. That's what this show was. Practically the whole thing was interview after backstage segment, after interview, after video package, after interview, after video game hype, after interview, and a lot of it didn't even mean anything. Hell, the first hour of the show only had about 6 minutes of wrestling, and it wasn't even good wrestling. At least in the second hour, they let AJ and Christian have a great match, but that was the only great match on this show. The rest of the show was devoted almost entirely to all the talking. And do you remember 2 weeks ago when TNA had a segment on iMPACT that was about 15 straight minutes of interviews, give or take? And wouldn't you know it, just as I predicted, it was the lowest rated segment of that particular show. Now, TNA, don't you think there's something that you can take away from this? History has shown that when you string together multiple backstage segments in one solid block, it does not draw. So why do you continue to do it? Now, this is just a theory that I have, okay? But here's what I think happened. Last week, TNA had their final set of iMPACT tapings before No Surrender. The thing is, they were taping 3 weeks worth of shows in 2 days, which they don't normally do. Normally, they do 2 shows in 2 days every 2 weeks, I think. Plus, if the spoilers that I read were in the order that they were taped, then they were filming these segments way out of order. So I think at some point along the line, the wrestling just kind of got away from them somewhere in between the interviews and the video game hype, so I hope TNA won't make this mistake again in the future. But while I'm on the subject, TNA, this is a really good place to discuss effective time management on the iMPACT show in regards to redundant backstage crap. Okay? If you have an interview that amounts to nothing more than Sting getting out of his car and walking into the building without answering any questions, guess what? You don't need it. If you have an interview that amounts to nothing more than ODB walking into the men's bathroom and taking a crap, you don't need it. You don't need to have 2 separate interviews with the beautiful people talking about a beauty contest next week. One accomplishes that just fine. Every interview should have a reason behind it, and every interview should tell us something that we didn't know before, but a lot of these interviews on this show didn't manage either of these things. And speaking of that beauty contest next week, why on earth would Taylor Wilde even participate in something like that when it's totally against her character? Next week she should go up to Angelina and tell Angelina to shove that beauty contest right up her ass. But I don't want to get carried away with the negative stuff again, okay? So let's talk about the good stuff about this show. This was week 2 without Gail Kim, and frankly, I haven't missed her at all, to be honest. I mean, look at all the positive changes in the Knockouts division since she's been gone. Roxy's getting regular screen time again. ODB's getting pushed against Awesome Kong, and most importantly, they teased unmasking Raisha Saeed. Melissa. So let's hope they follow through with that one. Also, this Sting angle is getting more and more interesting. Sting made some really good points last week. AJ Styles made some really good points this week. And AJ's position is basically, look, I've been here building TNA since day one, and Sting just jumped on the bandwagon when we got a TV deal. And since then, all he's really done here is show up every couple of months for a promo here, a match there. And for the most part, he just sits at home with his thumb up his ass, collecting a big fat paycheck for doing absolutely nothing, and why the hell should I respect him for that? And you know what? AJ was dead on. I mean, that's exactly what a lot of the fans have been saying about Sting for a while now. So again, both sides are making great cases. There isn't really a clear-cut heel here, at least not yet. And the only thing that worries me about this is that in the absence of a clear-cut heel, the fans are probably going to support Sting over Samoa Joe, mostly because of the way the writers have dropped the ball with Joe's character lately. But they kind of tease that Sting might be starting to turn on the fans a little bit, so I hope they won't wait too long to pull the trigger on that, if that is indeed where they're going with this feud. Anyway, this is making for some really interesting story dynamics. I mean, you've got a babyface Sting resorting to heel tactics to do what he thinks is right, and then you've got a Kurt Angle and Booker T who support him for it, but only because they're selfish bastard heels whose own goals just happen to coincide with Sting's in a really bizarre way. I mean, the complexity at work here is really intriguing to me, and you can definitely see them continuing to set the stage for Bound for Glory. In the meantime, we've got No Surrender on the horizon first, and the main event of that show looks awesome. You've got Samoa Joe, Kurt Angle, Booker T, and Christian Cage in a 4 corners match. There's no way that's going to suck. So, I was hot and cold with Impact this week. You know, this ended up being one of those shows where the angles and the storylines take precedence over the action. You know, there was too much redundant backstage stuff, plenty of video packages that didn't need to be there, and not nearly enough wrestling. Basically, the first 90 minutes of the show sucked, outside of a few bright spots. But the last half hour redeemed the show somewhat. I mean, there was a great AJ and Christian match. The stuff with Sting, Joe, and AJ is really starting to pull me in, so I didn't love Impact this week, but I didn't hate it either.